Okay, so this method, the static method, is invoked for us, and therefore we comply with the rules of swing, saying that this code, anything related to any component of swing, must be done on event dispatch thread. Observation number one. What about, like, when we're already running, right? When we start our application right here, when we're running, what about those clicks? Do you think these clicks are taking place on the event dispatch thread? Absolutely, because anything now which may be originated as a part of user action is going to be handled exactly by the same token, by the same method. Basically, if someone clicks this button, basically a helper object is going to be placed in the queue of event dispatch thread queue, and eventually is going to be handled. And of course, when we attach some code to one of our buttons or scroll bars or other types of gadgets, it's guaranteed that this code will be executing, and everything will be done on the event dispatch thread, number one. So that's observation number one, that any user interaction with our window is automatically guaranteed to be happening on the event dispatch thread. And in our simple application right now, basically beyond the point, right? So beyond this point that we create our window, we may forget about the event dispatch thread, because from this point on, all user interaction automatically will be taking place on that event dispatch thread. That's observation number one. Observation number two, look what happens to the main thread, right? We said that when the application starts, it still is called on this main thread right here, right? So what happens to this thread? Well, guess what? If you look carefully, all we do is that we say swing utilities invoke later. Okay, so we do that, swing utilities invoke later, and create this anonymous object which has this run method. But then the main thread basically reaches the bottom of our main method, and it simply exits. So basically, as soon as we place this object on the event dispatch thread, the main thread actually exits and returns back to the Java virtual machine, which basically most likely just says, oh, okay, you came back, so you have nothing else to do, and so this entire thing basically disappears, and everything that continues to run inside of our application is only this event dispatch thread. So once again, when I launch this application and say, okay, go ahead and execute this application, when I have this window, by the time I see this window, this main method, which was initially used to invoke our application, is now already gone, and most likely right now I have only the event dispatch thread, which gets invoked anytime I want to push the button or do something with my window, like, you know, minimize it and then restore its back size or maximize it on my screen and so forth. Okay, so these are a few observations, and unfortunately we have to deal with this strange looking code, but just remember that this strange looking code is really our fulfillment of the rule that if you need to work with swing, you have to make sure that all of the work that you do with swing is taking place on that special thread. Now, you don't create that thread of execution. I already told you that what takes place is that as soon as you begin to import anything from swing library, that secondary thread of execution, that event dispatch thread dedicated to any work related to swing, is going to be automatically created for you. Okay? And by the way, this is the main reason why if you program on Android, for instance, you know that Java environment on Android historically used to be called Dalvik environment, right? So this is similar to JVM. Later on, they switched to ART, simply Application Runtime Environment. It's called ART. And today, if you install an application on Android, sometimes you have a choice to switch between the Dalvik runtime environment and application runtime ART environment. But why the Java platform is different on Android? Because on Android, essentially Google decided that this automatic creation of event dispatch thread for Swing is going to be an overkill, and this is not the way they wanted to construct the user interface. And so Java runtime library, if you will, on Android is going to look different, and basically you don't use Swing there. So Dalvik environment or ART environment, which is basically the most current version of the only difference between Dalvik and ART basically on Android is that when you install an ART application, it gets pre-compiled to a native code, so it takes less time to load it into memory and execute, right? But this automatic creation of event dispatch thread, which was the original choice of Java library to create that event dispatch thread, actually is the reason why Android decided to take a different path and not use Java directly. The syntax is still Java, but you use different libraries and rules are different. But remember, when you use standard Java, you have to remember that it's easy to make a mistake and mix the responsibilities of different threads, but you must remember that any work with any of the graphical user interfaces must take place on event dispatch thread, and that's why we have to do something strange over here, right? So just out of curiosity, I'm just going to do this, right? I'm just going to say, hey, what if I didn't know about this rule and didn't want to do any of this, okay? So just all I'm going to do is comment this out, right? And pretend that I don't know about this, and I will simply just cut and paste directly into the main method all of this. So completely ignore the rule, right? Completely ignore the rule and just say that I'm just going to use my main thread and create JFrame and create the panel and buttons and populate everything and make it visible directly on the main thread of execution. So this is dangerous, and this is a very sort of like immature approach to do graphical user interface programming using Java. But you can see that it wasn't really disastrous, but so it still happened, and it's still behaving okay. But occasionally, during the execution of that program, especially when there is basically competition between the swing thread and non-swing threads, you may run into really strange bugs and system crashes. So just remember that although it may appear as if nothing happened, everything looks very innocent and everything runs just fine, this, what I just did, is a big mistake. Don't make that mistake. It's just not. This is the wrong way of doing things. Okay, so just remember that.